There is a man sitting alone right now, not because he was rejected, not because he failed, not because the world pushed him into a corner. He is alone because he finally opened his eyes. And the moment he did, everything changed. The friends who once felt close suddenly felt like strangers. The conversations that used to fill his evenings started to feel hollow. The noise that everyone else called living started to sound like a slow, repetitive lie. And here's what no one tells you about that moment. It is not a breakdown. It is a breakthrough. But the world will never call it that. The world will call you lonely. The world will call you antisocial. The world will say something is wrong with you because you no longer want to sit at tables where you have to shrink yourself to fit in. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, the emperor of Rome, wrote his most honest thoughts not in the Senate, not in front of generals, not in celebration. He wrote them alone, in a tent, at night, during a war. No audience, no applause, just a man, a candle, and the silence he chose. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He did not write that because solitude was comfortable. He wrote it because solitude was where the truth lived. And that is exactly why you are here. Not because you are broken, but because something inside you is being rebuilt, and the construction requires silence. This video is not a motivational speech. It will not tell you to smile more or believe in yourself. This is a philosophical blueprint drawn from the minds of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus for understanding why the most intelligent men in history chose to be alone, and why you might be following the same path without even realizing it. If you have ever looked around a crowded room and felt more alone than when you were actually by yourself, then every word in this video was written for you. Let us begin. Let us start with a truth that most people are not ready to hear. The loneliest men in the world are not the ones sitting alone. They are the ones surrounded by people who do not see them. Think about it. You can be at a dinner table with 5 people and still feel invisible. You can be in a group chat with 20 names and still feel like none of them would notice if you disappeared tomorrow. You can have a phone full of contacts and still have no one to call at 2 in the morning when your mind is falling apart. That is not connection. That is decoration. You are decorating your life with people, the same way someone hangs paintings in an empty house, not because the house feels like home, but because they do not want visitors to see how empty it really is. Seneca understood this over 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." He was not talking about travel. He was talking about you, spreading yourself across so many meaningless relationships that there is nothing left of you in any of them. And here is the part no one explains. When you finally realize this, when you pull back and start choosing solitude, the world does not congratulate you. It punishes you. Your friends say you have changed. Your family says you are distant. Society says you are depressed. But you are not depressed. You are awake. And being awake in a world that profits from your sleep is the most dangerous thing you can be. The intelligent man does not leave the crowd because he hates people. He leaves because he finally realized the crowd was never going anywhere. It was just moving, in circles. Loud, comfortable, familiar circles. And he wants a straight line, even if that line is lonely. Epictetus, a man who was born a slave, who had his leg broken by his master, who had every reason to seek comfort in others, said something that most free men never understand. No man is free who is not master of himself. He did not find that freedom in a group. He found it in the decision to stop needing one. And that decision, the decision to walk alone, is not a sign of weakness. It is the first real sign of strength, because anyone can follow a crowd. But it takes a specific kind of mind to look at the crowd, understand it, and say, "That is not where I belong." You are not antisocial. You are selectively present. And there is a difference the average mind will never understand. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat in complete silence and did not reach for your phone? Not 5 minutes of silence before sleep. Not the silence between 2 notifications. Real silence. The kind that lasts long enough for your own thoughts to become louder than everything else. Most people cannot do it. Not because they do not want to, but because they are afraid of what they will hear. Because silence does something terrifying. It introduces you to yourself, the version of you that exists underneath the opinions, the performance, the constant need to respond, react, post, prove. And that version, the quiet one, has things to say that the noisy version has been avoiding for years. The modern world is an economy of noise. Every app, every platform, every notification is designed to keep you reacting. Not thinking, reacting. There is a difference. Reacting is automatic. Thinking is deliberate. Reacting keeps you busy. Thinking keeps you free. And here is the uncomfortable truth. The system does not want you free. A free-thinking, silent, self-aware man is the worst customer in the world. He does not buy things to fill a void. He does not scroll for hours to numb an emotion. He does not argue with strangers online to feel significant. He just sits and thinks. And that is terrifying to an economy that survives on your restlessness. Marcus Aurelius saw the early version of this in Rome, the gladiator games, the public spectacles, the political theater designed to keep citizens distracted. He wrote, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." 2,000 years later, the gladiators are screens, the Colosseum is social media, and the insanity he warned about is now the default setting of modern life. Seneca took this even further. He said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it." Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements, if it were all well invested. Every minute you spend in noise that does not serve you, every conversation that drains you, every scroll that steals your attention, every relationship that exists out of habit instead of meaning, is a minute you will never get back. The intelligent man does not hate the modern world. He simply refuses to let it own his mind. He steps back, not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. He understands that his attention is the most valuable thing he owns, and he stops giving it away for free. And when he does that, when he chooses silence in a world addicted to noise, people call him strange. They call him cold. They call him disconnected. But he is not disconnected. He is the most connected person in the room. Because he is connected to the only thing that actually matters, himself. Let me tell you something about the most powerful man who ever chose to be alone. His name was Marcus Aurelius. He ruled the Roman Empire, the largest and most powerful civilization the ancient world had ever seen. He commanded legions. He controlled economies. He decided the fate of nations. And every night, when the generals left, when the advisors stopped talking, when the empire finally went quiet, he sat alone in his tent and wrote to himself, not for an audience, not for history, not for fame. He wrote for survival. The book we now call Meditations was never meant to be read by anyone. It was a private journal, a man talking to himself in the dark, trying to hold his mind together while the world around him was falling apart. A plague was destroying his empire. His most trusted general betrayed him. His own co-emperor, the man he shared power with, was unreliable at best. His children were not the leaders he hoped they would be. And his wife, according to historians, may not have been faithful. He had every reason to collapse, every reason to drown in bitterness, every reason to become the tyrant that power usually creates. But he did not. And the reason he did not was solitude, not isolation, not loneliness. Solitude, the chosen kind, the kind where you sit with your own chaos and decide to organize it instead of running from it. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That was not philosophy for him. That was a nightly survival tool. A reminder that the empire outside his tent was not his real battlefield. The real war was inside, the war between the man he was becoming and the man the world wanted him to be. And here is what makes Marcus Aurelius different from every motivational figure the internet throws at you. He did not choose solitude because he was enlightened. He chose it because he was overwhelmed, because the noise of Rome, the politics, the flattery, the lies, the performance was so loud that he could not hear his own conscience anymore. Solitude was not his reward, it was his medicine. And this is the part that connects directly to you. You are not choosing to be alone because your life is perfect. You are choosing it because something in your life is so loud, so constant, and so demanding that the only way to hear the truth is to remove everything that is not the truth. That is not weakness. That is what Marcus Aurelius did every single night for almost 20 years. And he ran an empire while doing it. If the most powerful man in the ancient world needed silence to survive, what makes you think you can do it without? There comes a point in every intelligent man's life where trust stops being automatic. It does not happen all at once. It is not a single betrayal. It is a series of small fractures. A friend who repeated what you said in private. A person who only called when they needed something. A relationship that taught you what someone's words sound like when they don't match their actions. None of these moments destroyed you, but together, slowly, quietly, they recalibrated your filter. And now you do not trust less because you are bitter. You trust less because you are accurate. You have simply collected enough data to know that most people are not dishonest. They are just unreliable. Not because they are bad, but because they are not paying attention to themselves the way you are paying attention to yourself. Seneca lived this truth. He was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, an advisor to Emperor Nero, and eventually that same emperor ordered him to kill himself. The man he served, the man he trusted, the man he dedicated years of his life to, ended him. And yet, years before that happened, Seneca wrote something that sounds like he already knew. It is more shameful to distrust our friends than to be deceived by them. Think about that carefully. He was not saying trust everyone blindly. He was saying that the pain of being deceived is less damaging than the prison of distrusting everyone. But, and this is the critical part, he was also saying that trust must be given with open eyes, not naively, not desperately, but selectively, intelligently. This is what the intelligent man learns through solitude. When you spend time alone, real time, not distracted time, you start to see relationships clearly. You see who reaches out and who only responds. You see who asks about you and who only talks about themselves. You see who stays when you have nothing to offer, and who disappears the moment you stop being useful. Solitude is not punishment. It is a filter. And once that filter is activated, once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. So Epictetus said it plainly. He who laughs at himself never runs out of things to laugh at. That sounds like a joke, but it is actually about self-awareness, the ability to observe yourself honestly enough to catch your own patterns. And when you apply that same observation to others, you start to understand that most people are not your enemies. They are simply not your allies. There is a middle ground, and that middle ground is where most of the world lives. The intelligent man does not hate people. He simply stops expecting them to be something they never promised to be. And in that release, in that letting go of expectation, he finds a kind of peace that no social circle ever gave him. So if this is the first time something about your solitude finally makes sense, if these words feel less like a video and more like a conversation you have been waiting to have, then you are exactly where you need to be. This channel was built for minds like yours. Subscribe and let us continue. In the year 41 AD, Seneca, one of the greatest minds Rome ever produced, was exiled to the island of Corsica. He was not exiled for a crime, he was exiled for politics. Emperor Claudius, under the influence of those around him, decided that Seneca was too dangerous to keep in Rome. Not because he was violent, because he was persuasive, because his words moved people. And in Rome, a man who could move minds was more threatening than a man who could move armies. So they sent him away, to a rocky, isolated island in the middle of the Mediterranean. No Senate, no students, no audience, no status. Just silence, stone, and sea. Most men would have broken. Seneca did the opposite. He wrote some of the most important philosophical letters in human history during that exile. Letters that are still read today, 2,000 years later. Letters about grief, about time, about anger, about how to live and how to die. Not because he had clarity in Rome, but because Rome was too loud for clarity. The exile gave him what Rome never could, the space to actually think. He wrote to his mother from that island. It is not that we have too little time, mother, but that we lose too much of it. Even in exile, even stripped of everything, his mind did not focus on what was taken. It focused on what was wasted. Well, and that shift, from loss to awareness, is the exact shift that happens when an intelligent man chooses solitude. You do not find yourself in comfort. You find yourself in removal. When the job title is gone, when the social circle shrinks, when the noise drops to nothing, what is left is either emptiness or essence. And the difference between those two outcomes isn't luck, it is practice. Seneca practiced. Every day on that island, he practiced being enough, without the external proof that Rome once gave him. And when he was eventually called back, when the exile ended and he returned to power, he was not the same man. He was quieter, sharper, less interested in applause, and more interested in truth. This is the gift that solitude gives you. Not immediately, not comfortably, but eventually. So it strips away every identity that was given to you and forces you to build one that is actually yours. You may not be on an island, but if life has recently removed something from you, a relationship, a friendship, a sense of belonging, consider the possibility that it was not punishment. Consider the possibility that, like Seneca, you are being given the one thing the busy world never offers: the space to become who you were supposed to be before the noise told you who to become instead. There is a word the world uses to describe every man who is alone. That word is lonely, but that word is a lie, at least the way it is used. Loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. They are, in fact, opposites. Loneliness is the pain of being alone without choosing it. Solitude is the power of being alone because you chose it. One is a prison, the other is a fortress. And the world deliberately confuses them, because if you understood the difference, you would stop needing what the world is selling. Think about it. Every advertisement, every dating app, every social platform is built on one assumption: that you are incomplete alone. that happiness requires another person, another group, another experience that is not the one you are currently having. The entire economy of modern connection is built on convincing you that solitude is a disease and that their product is the cure. But Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by millions of subjects, countless advisors, an entire empire of human connection, still wrote alone at night. Because even with all of that, he understood that the most important relationship a man will ever have is the one with his own mind. Loneliness says, "No one is here, and I am suffering." Solitude says, "No one is here, and I am finally free to work." Loneliness is reactive. It is a response to absence. Solitude is proactive. It is a choice to create presence. Inner presence. The man who is lonely needs the world to come to him. The man who has chosen solitude has already built a world inside himself, and he doesn't need visitors. Seneca described this perfectly. The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable. The lonely man is anxious. He wonders when connection will come, when the phone will ring, when the emptiness will end. But the man in solitude has no anxiety about connection, because he is not waiting for anything. He is building something. Quietly. Patiently. Without an audience. And here is the paradox that confuses most people. Well, the man who chooses solitude is often the man who is most capable of deep connection, because he has done the inner work. He has sat with himself long enough to know himself, his patterns, his wounds, his strengths, his lies. And a man who knows himself that well can meet another person without performance, without masks, without the desperate need to be liked. Loneliness creates needy relationships. Solitude creates honest ones. So the next time someone tells you that being alone is unhealthy, ask yourself, are they worried about your health, or are they uncomfortable with your independence? Because a man who does not need anyone, but chooses to be with someone, is the most powerful kind of man there is. And that kind of man is only built in solitude. There is a story that most philosophy channels will not tell you, not because it is hidden, but because it is uncomfortable. Epictetus was born a slave, not a metaphorical slave, not a man who felt trapped by his job or his relationship, a literal slave, owned by another man. His body was property. His time was not his. His future was decided by someone else's mood. And at some point during his enslavement, his master broke his leg. Some accounts say it was deliberate, a punishment, a display of power. Others say it was negligence. Either way, Epictetus walked with a limp for the rest of his life. Now, if you took that biography and handed it to a modern psychologist, they would have every reason to predict a man filled with bitterness, rage, and a lifelong need for external validation. A man who, once freed, would spend his life trying to prove that he was worthy, that he mattered, that the world owed him something. But Epictetus did none of that. When he was finally freed, he did not chase power. He did not chase wealth. He did not chase the approval of Rome. He moved to a small town, opened a small school, and began teaching philosophy to anyone who would listen. And the core of his teaching, the center of everything he believed, was this: freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. He did not learn that from a book. He learned it from having everything taken from him. His body was controlled, but his mind was not. His leg was broken, but his thinking was intact. His freedom was stolen, but his inner world was untouched. That is the lesson most people miss about solitude. It is not about being physically alone. It is about being mentally free. While you can be in a room full of people and still be sovereign over your own mind. And you can be completely alone and still be a slave to your phone, to your fears, to the opinions of people who are not even in the room. Epictetus understood that the deepest form of solitude is not external, it is internal. It is the ability to sit inside your own mind without needing escape, without needing distraction, without needing someone else to tell you that your thoughts are valid. And that ability, that internal solitude, is what separates the man who is alone and suffering from the man who is alone and building. You do not need to be a slave to understand this, but you do need to be honest enough to ask yourself, what is still controlling me? What opinion, what fear, what memory is still making decisions on my behalf without my permission? Because until you answer that question, honestly, alone, in silence, you are not free. You are just unshackled. And there is a difference. There is a question that will change the way you live, if you let it. Who have you given access to your mind that never earned it? Not access to your house, not access to your phone, access to your thoughts, access to your emotions, access to the quiet internal space where you make your most important decisions. Because most men have open-door policies for their minds. Anyone can walk in. A comment from a stranger can ruin your morning. A memory of someone who left can hijack your entire afternoon. An opinion from someone you do not even respect can echo in your head for days. That is not connection. If that is invasion, and it happens because no one taught you to guard the door. Marcus Aurelius wrote something about this that most people read too quickly. How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? Read that again. He is not saying, do not feel anger. He is saying that the damage you do to yourself by reacting, by letting someone else's behavior control your internal state, is always worse than whatever they actually did. And here is where solitude becomes strategic. When you spend time alone, genuinely alone, without input, without consumption, without reaction, you begin to notice who lives in your head rent-free. You begin to see which voices are yours and which were installed by someone else. And you begin to understand that half of your daily stress does not come from your life. It comes from your unfiltered access policy. The intelligent man does not build walls, he builds doors with locks. He decides who gets in, he decides which thoughts are residents and which are trespassers, and he does not feel guilty about it. Seneca gave the clearest instruction on this. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those who you are capable of improving. That is the energy audit. 2 questions. Is this person making me better? Am I making this person better? If the answer to both is no, the relationship is not a relationship. It is a habit. And habits without purpose are just comfortable ways to waste your life. This is why intelligent men shrink their circles, not because they are arrogant, but because they finally did the math. They looked at where their energy was going and realized that most of it was being invested in people and patterns that gave nothing back. Solitude is not about removing people from your life. It is about removing the wrong people from your mind. And sometimes, often, actually, those are the same thing. The Stoics had a concept that is more relevant today than it was 2,000 years ago. They called it the inner citadel. Not a physical place, a mental one, a fortress inside the mind, built not from stone, but from discipline, self-awareness, and the daily practice of choosing which thoughts to let in and which to keep out. Marcus Aurelius used this concept constantly. When the plague was killing thousands and his generals were panicking, he retreated, not physically, but internally. When political enemies spread lies about him and the Senate grew suspicious, he did not argue. He retreated. When his own body started to fail him toward the end of his life, pain, exhaustion, the slow collapse that comes from decades of carrying an empire, he retreated. not into denial, into clarity. The inner citadel is not about ignoring reality. It is about choosing which part of reality you allow to affect your judgment. The plague is real, but panic is optional. The betrayal is real, but bitterness is a choice. The pain is real, but suffering is something you add on top of it, voluntarily, when you let your mind run unsupervised. This is the architecture of a mind that no one can break. And it is built only in solitude. You cannot build an inner citadel in a group chat, and you cannot reinforce it while scrolling through other people's opinions. You cannot maintain it while constantly explaining yourself to people who have no interest in understanding you. It requires silence. Daily silence. Not hours, minutes. 5 minutes of sitting with your own mind, without input, without escape, without performance. 5 minutes of asking yourself, what is bothering me right now? And is it actually mine? Is this worry something I chose, or something I absorbed from someone else's fear? That practice, that small, daily withdrawal into the citadel, is what separates the man who is overwhelmed by life from the man who moves through life with precision. Epictetus taught his students that the citadel was not a luxury, it was a necessity. He said that a man who cannot retreat into his own mind is a man who will always be at the mercy of whatever happens next. And a man at the mercy of the world is not a man, he is a leaf, blown in whichever direction the wind decides. You are not a leaf. You are the man building the fortress. And every moment of chosen silence, every hour you spend alone, not because you have to, but because you understand the value of it, is another stone in the wall that protects the only thing you truly own, your mind. There is something about a quiet man that makes the world uncomfortable. Not the shy man, not the insecure man, not the man who is silent because he has nothing to say. The man who is silent because he has already said everything. To himself. The man who walks into a room and does not compete for attention. The man who listens more than he speaks. The man whose silence is not empty, but full. That man is feared, not because he is dangerous, but because he cannot be controlled. Think about how control works in the modern world. It works through reaction. Someone says something provocative, and they wait for you to react. Someone disrespects you, and they wait for your anger. Someone achieves something, and they wait for your jealousy. The entire social ecosystem runs on action and reaction, stimulus and response. But the silent man breaks the loop. He does not react. He observes. He processes. He chooses. And that delay, that space between stimulus and response, is the most powerful position a human being can occupy. Marcus Aurelius called it the ruling faculty, the part of the mind that decides what something means before the body responds. He believed that between every event and your reaction to it, there is a gap. And in that gap lives your entire freedom. The man who masters that gap, the man who can feel provocation and choose stillness, who can witness chaos and choose clarity, is the man who cannot be manipulated. And in a world that runs on manipulation, through media, through social pressure, through emotional triggers, that man is a threat. This is why your silence makes people uncomfortable. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are doing something they cannot do. You are sitting in a room with your own thoughts and not reaching for a distraction. You are walking away from arguments that you could win, because winning is no longer the point. You are choosing peace over being right, and that choice confuses everyone who still believes that being right is the highest achievement. Seneca saw this clearly. He watched men in Rome destroy their reputations, their health, and their families, all to win arguments that no one would remember a month later. And he wrote for those men. He wrote so that maybe one of them would stop long enough to realize that the battle was never worth fighting. Your silence is not passive. It is the most active thing you do. It is a daily decision to protect your energy, your clarity, and your direction from a world that wants all three. And the men who understand this, the men who have chosen silence not as retreat, but as strategy, those are the men who build things that last. Quietly, without announcements, without applause, because the loudest rooms produce the least, and the quietest minds build the most. Everything we have discussed in this video means nothing if it stays in this video. Philosophy that lives only in your ears is entertainment. Philosophy that lives in your morning is transformation. And the difference between the two is practice. So here is the practice. The one that Marcus Aurelius did every morning in his tent. The one that Seneca did before Rome woke up. The one that Epictetus taught his students before any lesson began. It has 3 parts. It takes less than 10 minutes. And it will change the way you experience every single day. Part 1. The first 5 minutes after you wake up, before you touch your phone, before you check a single notification, sit in silence. Not meditation, not visualization, just silence. Let your mind present whatever it wants to present. Worries, plans, memories. Do not judge them. Do not follow them. Just observe them, like watching clouds pass. This trains your mind to understand that thoughts are events, not commands. They appear. They pass. And you are the one who decides which ones stay. Part 2. After the silence, ask yourself one question. What is within my control today? Not what you hope will happen. Not what you fear will happen. What can you actually, physically, measurably control? Your effort, your words, your attention, your response to whatever the day throws at you. Write those down, mentally or physically. This is your jurisdiction for the day. Everything outside that list is not your responsibility. Release it before it becomes your burden. Part 3. Before you leave your room, before you enter the world and its noise, choose one principle. Just one. Not 10 commandments. One line. One idea that will be your anchor for the day. It could be from Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. It could be from Seneca. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. It could be your own words, but make it clear. Make it specific. And carry it with you like a weapon you hope you will not need, but know you might. This is the practice. It does not require a monastery. It does not require a mountain. It requires 10 minutes and the courage to be alone with your own mind before the world tells you what to think. Well, and here is what happens when you do this consistently. Not after one day, not after 1 week, but after 1 month of this practice, you will notice something strange. The things that used to bother you, the comment that would ruin your morning, the person who would drain your energy, the fear that would keep you up at night, they start to lose power. Not because they disappear, but because you are no longer standing in their path without armor. The inner citadel we talked about earlier. This is how you build it. Not in one dramatic moment, but in 10 quiet minutes, every morning, before anyone else is awake. The Stoics did not become wise by reading philosophy. They became wise by practicing it, alone, in silence, before the world had a chance to interrupt. You have that same opportunity. Every single morning. The question is not whether you have the time. The question is whether you have the discipline to protect it. Let me tell you what is actually happening to you. You did not stumble into solitude. You grew into it. Every disappointment that taught you who not to trust. Every silence that taught you what your own voice sounds like. Every crowded room that taught you the difference between company and connection. All of it was preparation, not punishment. Preparation. Marcus Aurelius did not become Marcus Aurelius in the Senate. He became himself in the silence of his tent. Seneca did not write his greatest wisdom in the halls of Rome. He wrote it on a rocky island where everything was taken from him. Epictetus did not discover freedom when his chains were removed. He discovered it while they were still on. These were not broken men hiding from the world. These were awake men building inside themselves what the world could never give them and could never take away. And that is exactly what you are doing, whether you realize it or not. The friends who fell away, they didn't leave because you are unworthy. They left because you stopped performing. And anyone who requires your performance as the price of their presence was never really present to begin with. The silence that feels uncomfortable. It is not emptiness. It is space. Space for the version of you that has been waiting underneath the noise, underneath the expectations, underneath the years of being who everyone else needed you to be. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not the sad story the world is trying to write for you. But you are a man who chose to stop running and started building. And the building happens in the quiet. Always in the quiet. If you stayed until this point, you are not just watching. You are becoming. You are the kind of mind that does not need noise to feel alive. And this channel, this space, was built for exactly that kind of mind. Hit subscribe. This is where silent minds gather. I will leave you with one final thought from Marcus Aurelius. He wrote it at night, alone, during a war that seemed endless, in a body that was beginning to fail him. He wrote it not for the world, but for himself. And somehow, across 2,000 years, it found its way to you. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Protect them, guard them, build them in silence. And the world will have no choice but to respect what you have built.